The Crucible, The Lost Act. Elizabeth approaches her home and catches a glimpse through the window of John and Abigail sharing a kiss in the living room.
I can't believe that you would involve yourself with adultery. It's a sin!
It isn't what it looks like, Goody Proctor.
How could you allow the sin to happen in our own home?
I can explain, Elizabeth.
Abigail, leave. Your presence is no longer needed.
Don't be irrational, Elizabeth. She is our servant.
Not anymore. As of this moment, she no longer works for us. Leave, Abigail, and don't plan on coming back.
You're overreacting. It isn't what it seemed to be.
It sure looked like to me you were involving yourself with adultery, John. What do you think is going to happen to your name? It sure is going to make it look good in the village. The people of the village will talk if they catch one word of what happened in our house tonight.
The people in Salem will hear nothing of what happened. My name will not be affected in any way because nothing happened to change it.
God knows all, John. Abigail will hold this against us. She is trying to take my place as your wife.
She's not taking your place, and she never will. She is merely a silly girl that thinks that there is something between us, but that, my dear, is not the truth.
Lying is a sin as well, John.
As tension builds between Elizabeth and John, Abigail leaves, still thinking of the encounter that happened just moments earlier in the arms of John Proctor. John Proctor was a man in his mid-30s that was ruggedly handsome and farmed for a living. He had 2 kids with his third wife, Elizabeth. John avoided the judgment of the church and Reverend Parris, but claimed to be a godly man. He had a habit of being a hypocrite because of his harsh judgment towards others, yet John had committed the sin of adultery. His wife Elizabeth suffered from postpartum depression after the birth of her second child and was often withdrawn from their marriage. Abigail Williams was a young and beautiful girl of 17 living with her uncle, Reverend Parris, due to the death of her parents. Abigail Williams was looking for work in the village. As John and Elizabeth led their busy lives, they requested a servant to help with housework. Abigail caught word of the job opportunity and decided that she would take it upon herself to take up the offer. Abigail planned on a meeting later that week. Abigail approaches the Proctor's home. John is waiting by the door, and Elizabeth is waiting in the living room. Abigail knocks on the door, and John answers.
Come on in.
Good evening, Abigail.
Good evening, Goody Proctor. I understand that you are looking for a servant.
Indeed we are. I must ask, what makes you think you are qualified to work for my husband and I?
Well, Goody Proctor, I do the majority of cooking and cleaning for my uncle, and I also look after Betty for him. I believe that I have enough experience to be eligible for this job.
She seems fit for the job. I believe we should hire her immediately.
Let us not be hasty, John. We should discuss this and make our decision. Thank you, Abigail. You'll be hearing from us within a week. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you, Goody Proctor. Goodbye, Mr. Proctor.
An argument ensues after the departure of Abigail between John and Elizabeth.
I feel that she is not the person we are looking for. We should keep searching within the town. Surely there must be somebody in need for a job.
She has all of the qualifications, Elizabeth. I see no reason not to hire her. If I can look past my dislike for her relationship to Reverend Parris, then you should be able to look past your mistrust of her.
She gazed upon you the whole time, John. She obviously lusted for you. How can you be so blind? I will not have some teenage girl in this house trying to tempt you and committing adultery.
Of course, Elizabeth, I am blind. I choose what I see and what I do not see. Do you really think so little of me that I would commit a sin against God in our marriage?
There are times when I do not know what to think, John. If you believe that her intentions are true in wanting this job, then we will hire her.
I will go to town tomorrow and notify her.
Abigail runs on home to inform Reverend Parris and Betty about the news of the job working for John and Elizabeth Proctor.
Reverend Parris, Betty, I have great news.
What is it, Abigail?
I just had a talk with Elizabeth and John Proctor about being a servant for their house. I am now waiting for the news, and I believe that it went very well.
That is great news, Abigail. I'm very proud of you, although I do wish it would be a different home than instead of the Proctors. But nonetheless, I am proud.
This is a great opportunity for you, Abigail. I hope the Proctors agree that you will make a great servant in their home.
John waits until early morning to go visit Abigail in the village. He looks around for her and finds her nearing his house.
Abigail, do you have a minute?
A minute isn't too much to ask for, I suppose.
My wife and I have been thinking about hiring you for the job. We have come upon an agreement. If you wish to accept, then you may begin to work at sunrise.
Oh, thank you, John. I have been searching for work in the village for some time now. I will not disappoint you or Goody Proctor. You will be very pleased with my work.
See you at daybreak, Abigail.
Likewise, John.
John returns home a few minutes later to speak with Elizabeth.
John, is that you?
Yes, Elizabeth.
So how did the meeting go with Abigail?
All went well. She accepted the job offer and will start in the morning.
Oh, good. Now we have some time to relax.
Indeed you do.
John and Elizabeth relax the remainder of the evening and wait for Abigail's arrival. Elizabeth leaves early in the morning, leaving John to show Abigail around the house. What John doesn't know is where Elizabeth is going off to visit Reverend Hale. Reverend Hale was a priest in his 40s from Beverly, visiting Salem and Elizabeth. He was youthful for his age and had a secret affair with Elizabeth Proctor. Elizabeth was the only one who knew he was visiting Salem until he was called to help with a child afflicted with supposed witchcraft. Elizabeth approaches Reverend Hale's house and sneakily enters.
Good morning, Goody Proctor.
I was sure that someone would see my presence on this side of town.
You shouldn't worry about anyone seeing you. They don't know what your plans are.
I feel like this is so wrong to do, but all just seems so right. I will tell John soon, but I don't know how to break it to him.
There is no news to break yet. Our relationship shall be a secret, not heard in the village.
I don't want my name to be bad in the village. My name is Goody Proctor. What is the good about being involved when I have a husband of my own?
John has been too caught up with teaching Abigail all of her newfound duties as their servant to notice that his wife hadn't been there when he awoke. Elizabeth arrives at home.
Where have you been this dawn?
I went out for some air.
Are you feeling ill?
No, John. Sometimes I just need a little break.
Well, how much of a break do you need? We hired a servant. What else is there to worry about in the world?
I just needed a little bit of air. Some time to think about some things. You act like I'm a worthless piece of trash rather than your wife.
What has gotten into you? Maybe you need a little more fresh air.
Elizabeth storms out without speaking another word. Abigail comes out from the kitchen to speak with John.
Is everything okay?
Nothing is okay anymore.
Would you like to talk about it? I'm not very good with lust, but I assure you I'm a great listener.
You shall have a seat then.
Abigail takes a seat on the couch and John walks across the room to sit next to her. The room grows silent as John looks Abigail in the eyes.
What is it that is bothering you, Mr. Proctor?
Please call me John, Abby.
That name has a nice ring to it. Is that appropriate with you being my superior at all?
I'm just going to tell you how it is, Abby. I have seen you around the village. Elizabeth knows not of my feelings for you, but my compassion of all of your work. The work is a bonus to that, to what I would rather expect of you, Abby. I ask that you say nothing of this conversation.
What do you mean, John?
I mean this.
John pauses his sentence, grabs Abigail's flawless skin and kisses her upon the lips. Abigail is caught off guard and stares into John's eyes.
What does this mean, John? What will Goody Proctor think of this? You're a godly man. You shall only involve yourself with godly things. This is a sin, one in which I believe you do not want to be a part of.
You've seen how she looked at me, how she spoke about needing air. This is her air. I am the space she needed to get rid of to make new. It's time for a change, and I'm going to make it.
Abigail takes a moment to think about what has went on that evening and evaluate John's expression. After a few moments of consideration, Abigail gave herself up to John and left later that night with no regrets. Elizabeth was yet to return until the next day. Dawn approached, and so did Abigail. Abigail enters the Proctor's home.
How do you do today, John?
Better, but I'm still thinking about what happened last night.
It doesn't have to be spoken of, John. It was just another night. We are just two people who made another mistake.
It wasn't a mistake, and that is the single most problem. I'm not sure what to do about it. Everything just felt so right.
Then maybe it is right. Goody Proctor was wrong for treating you wrong. I want you to know, John, that I will always treat you right.
At the moment that Abigail shared another kiss with John, Elizabeth walked through the front door. Abigail finds that she had been daydreaming for some time now in the front yard of the Proctors. She snaps out of it and stands up.
What is your filth still doing in my yard?
I lost track of time.
I told you, you needed to leave, and that meant now!
Abigail left their property. Elizabeth leaves to go to Reverend Hale's house. She had found out while she left for a few days that she was expecting a child, one that was in fact not John's. She needed to speak with him about what they would do about the new news that they had discovered. She stormed into his house.
What brings you here at this time of day, Elizabeth?
I'm bearing some news that I must allow you to know.
Why? Is everything alright, Goody Proctor?
It's not just news that I'm bearing something a little more important. I am bearing a child, Reverend Hale. Your child!
It can't be. So soon? When did you find this out? How?
It's an instinct. I just know. And it isn't John's. I will tell him eventually, but we're in a bind at the moment. I just wanted you to know. I shall leave now.
We will speak of this more at a better moment. As for now, I have to go check on Betty. She has fallen ill, and I have been asked to diagnose her. Good day, Elizabeth.
Go, Jacob.
The Crucible, The Lost Act.
Haley Spence as Reverend Hale, or E.T. Jordan Kurtz as Elizabeth Proctor. Adri Lemke as Reverend Paris. Jordan Kurtz as Betty Paris, or Betty White. Katie Cheney as Abigail Williams. And Adri Lemke as John Proctor. Hold on, wait! Then
And-
do a final bow.
Alakai Cheney as Reverend Pale's baby.
Okay, final bow. Woo! Clap. Thank you. Okay, that was good. Your child! Oh, God!
Why? Is everything alright, Goody Proctor?
It's not just news that I'm bearing. I'm bearing something a little more important than that. I'm bearing a child, Reverend Hale. Your child!
Reverend Hale was a priest in his 40s.
Oh! No!